free.
This one for WWE champions. Pay to win like every day, yeah.
I don't play mobile games.
Funny how they still think I'm a broke man.
Then I'm broke.
Even though I be pulling Hogan.
Free.
I spent like 40 grand on a couple thousand pictures of some sweaty men.
So, those are just some of the, I mean, there's tons of review scores that have come out. Aggregate, basically it's getting in the 90s on PC and high 80s on console. And you might say, wait, what's the difference? Graphics. Basically on PC, this thing can run like uncapped frame rate, depending on your rig. On console, listen to this. This is very bizarre because I never would have expected this one, okay? Dragon's Dogma 2 runs better on the Xbox Series X than it does on the PS5. On PS5, it essentially runs around 30 frames per second. On the Xbox Series X, Dragon's Dogma 2 runs at 40 frames per second, but it fluctuates. So it actually runs better on Xbox, which is almost never the case, correct? It's almost always in favor of the PlayStation 5 this console gen when it has a cross-gen or a cross-platform game like this. So, weird, right? Very weird. So I'd like to just read you guys a couple quick review summaries, all right? This one's from RPG Site. More than just a retread of the 2012 original, Dragon's Dogma 2 fulfills and expands upon the promise of its predecessor, culminating in what can only be described as a generational RPG. Whoa, that sounds like high praise. From Colt Eastwood, Dragon's Dogma 2 on Xbox Series X runs an average of 6 frames higher than PS5, stays closer to 40 frames in combat. PS5, it's closer to 30 and sometimes goes under. I recommend getting it on PC if possible. Okay? This one's from Okami13. Dragon's Dogma 2 is my new game of the year. But it's March. I hate the people who do this. It's my game of the year. It's fucking March, right? Capcom delivered an absolute masterpiece, but performance issues at times can hurt an otherwise unforgettable experience. There you go. And then I actually found this tweet entertaining from Theo Crusader. He says, Dragon's Dogma 2 fanboys are posting the review scores and ignoring the fact that they're going to be playing it like a slideshow. So, essentially, what they're saying is it's really, really, really good. It's long. It has a lot of content. They've improved upon almost everything in the original game, although they make it feel like a new experience. It doesn't feel like you're just playing Dragon's Dogma 1 all over again. They did add new things and improve upon a lot of things, but the bummer is the graphics just aren't as good as they could be. Like, people really feel like it should be at a better frame rate. And I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, it should be 60 frames. I still don't understand why. Why can't these game developers make their games 1080p 60 frames? And here's the thing. I think I know the answer. Okay? The answer is this. Because we pushed technology too far, too fast, and we rushed into 4K. That's the answer. Because all these games basically have to have, they have to have 4K resolution modes. And since they have to do that, they have to add enough detail and enough to make it 4K. So when they do that, now they're like, well, how do we make it 60 frames? Well, no one's expecting 60 frames at 4K, right? But now, because you put so much detail and shit into the game, now it's like an afterthought to try to get it to run better on the lower resolutions. Imagine if this generation, the only goal was 1080p 60 frames. You understand that if that was the actual focus this console generation, every game would be that. Literally every game would run 1080p 60 frames. The problem is we push technology where every TV is 4K, everyone wants 4K. All right, now have you seen the difference between 4K and 1080p? There's some difference, notably in movies. Movies probably take advantage of it more. In video games, when there's a lot of motion and everything, it's not that big of a difference. It's not, okay? And people who freak out about this, I demand 4K and everything. Basically, you've made these game devs rush forward at a point where they weren't really ready for that, in my opinion. From what I'm seeing, from the climate of the industry, from what how is it we have these incredibly powerful boxes and we can't just boot a game at 60 frames yet? It doesn't even make fucking sense, right? Why? Because they put too much detail in them. Why? Because they needed that detail for 4K. It's stupid. It's stupid, especially when, have you even heard a single game dev say that they've really benefited from 4K? Have you heard one say that? Like, when people were saying, oh, we went from, standard definition to HD, or when we went from 720p to 1080p, people definitely saw the difference, correct? Like you could see a big generational jump in the quality of games when that happened. Have you seen a generational jump since all games now can render in 4K? Have you seen any big differences? It's stupid. I mean, what's happened is instead of them focusing on lighting, on better aliasing, and what do they call it, ray tracing, and the frame rate, they've now got to fuck around with adding enough details to make it be 4K first, and then try to make everything else work after the fact. It's really dumb. So this is the problem. They focus fidelity over frame rate. And when they do that, the entire industry suffers. You know, 100%. Okay, 100%. I can tell you that basically if we didn't have 4K resolution right now as a requirement, Dragon's Dogma 2 would probably be 60 frames per second on every format. But we skipped it. If you remember, like last gen, a lot of games started at 720p and then they jumped to 1080p. Some were variable resolution. And then all of a sudden this gen, every game's 4K. That was the problem. The jump was too much. So this pisses me off because I would love to have Dragon's Dogma 2 as a beautiful 60 frame RPG. And now we got to have this fluctuating hybrid game. For who? Who is the sales audience out there that if you announce that Dragon's Dogma 2 only rendered at 1080p, that they would say, we're panning the game, we're never playing it? What would it be? Like 1,000 people? Whoop-de-fucking-do. Why are we catering to these people who are so demanding and picky instead of just making something that everyone would benefit from right from the ground level, you know? So this basically pisses me off because now people are going to say, oh, don't get Dragon's Dogma 2 because it runs under 60 frames on console. And that's a stupid mentality. If it really is as good as these reviewers are saying, and you're going to skip out on a game that's a potential Game of the Year contender simply because it doesn't run at a smooth 60 frames, that's pretty stupid. But a lot of people are like that. Like, a lot of people are so demanding that today they will not buy a game if it doesn't run at the best performance. You know what I'm saying? Dark Gaming says Baldur's Gate 3 is 30 frames. No. It runs at 60 frames for me, but it's hybrid. Like, a lot of the times it's 60, and then it chugs in parts, right? Especially in combat, or if you're in parts of the Baldur's Gate itself, and there's a lot going on around you, then it dips. So it's a variable frame rate, but it aims for 60, and it hits it a lot of the time. But what they're saying, Dragon's Dogma 2 never hits 60 on console. Like I said, on Xbox Series X, it hits around 40-ish, which is good, but you want more, right? So I'm happy to hear this news. I'm excited, and I really feel like now I made the right choice, because if you remember, this week was a big choice. Am I doing Rise of the Ronin or Dragon's Dogma 2? And I tried to take in your feedback, and that's great. Your feedback has been amazing because you led me, I think, to the right decision. Okay, but man, I'll be honest. I think that will be the one thing that we criticize is the graphics. If the game plays well, if the game has great combat mechanics, great RPG mechanics, and a huge open world, tons of fun stuff to do, and it chugs, it's going to be frustrating, right?